The Azure Room didn't serve food. It served status. Every plate was a statement. Every glass of wine, a transaction dressed in burgundy. The chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks over tables where senators whispered to developers and celebrities hid scandals behind $40 appetizers. The walls glowed midnight blue, polished until they reflected not just faces, but secrets. Sebastian Bates sat at table 7, the one with the clearest view of both exits and the kitchen. Not because he was paranoid. Paranoia implied uncertainty, and Sebastian Bates had stopped being uncertain the night he buried his first body in a cornfield outside Chicago. To the servers, he was just another whale in a $1,000 suit. To the kitchen staff, he was the man who tipped in hundreds and never sent anything back. To the 3 men positioned at strategic points around the restaurant, his men, dressed like businessmen, watching like soldiers, he was the reason they got paid enough to forget what they saw. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all, missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride as we're currently battling some technical issues, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. Forbes called him a visionary. The Wall Street Journal profiled his innovative approach to urban renewal. What they meant was, Sebastian Bates bought abandoned warehouses in neighborhoods the city had left to rot and turned them into nightclubs where the beautiful people spent money they hadn't earned yet. What they didn't write was where the initial capital came from, or why rival developers who got too aggressive tended to sell their holdings suddenly, quietly, and at a loss. Sebastian cut into his stake with the precision of a man who'd learned to make every motion count. 42 years old, silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, a face that would have been handsome if his eyes weren't so empty. He'd left Chicago 8 years ago, trading snow and blood for palm trees and cleaner kills. Los Angeles suited him. The city was built on pretty lies and buried bodies. He just added his to the pile. The jazz quartet in the corner played something soft and forgettable. Conversations hummed at a volume designed not to carry. Everything in the Azure Room was calibrated, controlled, civilized. Until 9:16 p.m. The first sound wasn't gunfire, it was glass, the floor-to-ceiling window facing Wilshire Boulevard exploding inward in a shower of crystal teeth. Then came the bullets, cracking through the air like whips, and the screaming started. 7 men poured through the shattered window. Not random thugs or desperate addicts. These moved like a tactical unit, fanning out with military precision, covering angles, eliminating threats. They wore street clothes but carried themselves like operators. Ex-military, Sebastian's brain cataloged in the half-second before he moved. Organized, expensive, here for me. The first bullet hit the wine bottle on his table, spraying Bordeaux across white linen like arterial blood. The second tore through the chair where he'd been sitting a heartbeat earlier. Sebastian was already moving, his hand inside his jacket, fingers closing around the Glock he kept in a custom holster against his ribs. Not legal, not registered, not a problem. The restaurant descended into beautiful chaos. Tables flipped. Crystal shattered. A woman in diamonds crawled under a booth, her $1,000 dress dragging through wine and broken glass. The jazz quartet abandoned their instruments and ran. Smart. Sebastian's 3 men were already returning fire, but they were outgunned, and they knew it. This wasn't a robbery. This was an execution dressed up as a massacre. Then, through the smoke and screaming, Sebastian saw something impossible. A waitress, young, black, wearing the Azure Room's standard uniform of black slacks and white button-down, dropped her tray of champagne flutes. They fell in slow motion, glass tumbling through air, liquid catching the light. But she wasn't frozen in terror like everyone else. She was moving. She grabbed the edge of a table and flipped it in one smooth motion, using it as cover. Her movements weren't frantic or lucky. They were practiced, efficient, the muscle memory of someone who'd done this before. She ducked low, stayed behind cover, and when one of the attackers swung his rifle toward a family of 4 cowering near the kitchen entrance, she moved again. Jessica Marley didn't think about it. Thinking got you killed. She'd learned that in Helmand Province, in rooms that smelled like cordite and copper, in moments when hesitation meant your buddy went home in a box. Her body moved before her mind caught up, running calculations she'd trained herself not to question. Distance, angle, available weapons, exit routes. The serving tray was heavy silver, solid enough. She gripped it by the edge, rotated her shoulders, and threw it like a discus. It spun through the air and caught the gunman across the temple with a wet crack. He staggered, his shot going wide, bullets chewing up the ceiling instead of the 4-year-old girl screaming under her mother's arms. Sebastian fired twice. Center mass, controlled pairs, the way they taught you when accuracy mattered more than volume. His target went down hard. But he was tracking the waitress now, watching her move through the chaos like she'd memorized the choreography. She wasn't running for the exits. She was fighting. She grabbed a wine bottle by the neck, smashed it against a table edge, and drove the jagged glass into another attacker's thigh. Femoral artery, Sebastian's mind noted, dropping him screaming. Her face was blank, focused, empty of everything except the mission. Because that's what this was to her, he realized. Not panic, not survival, a mission. Their eyes met across 15 feet of smoke and bodies. Hers were dark brown, alert, assessing him the same way he was assessing her. For half a second, the war paused. Then 3 more gunmen converged on Sebastian's position, and the moment shattered. Jessica rolled behind the bar, came up with a cocktail shaker, and hurled it hard enough to crack the nearest shooter across the jaw. Sebastian put 2 rounds through another one's chest, the impacts punching him backward into an overturned table. His last man, Marcus, a former Marine who'd saved Sebastian's life in a parking garage 2 years ago, took down the 6th attacker with a headshot that painted the midnight blue wall with something darker. That left 1. The last gunman was backing toward the broken window, weapons swinging between Sebastian and Jessica, trying to cover both threats at once. Big mistake. You never split your attention in a firefight. Jessica came over the bar low and fast. Sebastian fired high, forcing the gunman to duck. In that half-second of distraction, Jessica closed the distance and drove her shoulder into his knees. He went down hard, and she didn't give him time to recover. Her elbow found his throat, once, twice, until the fight went out of him and his weapon clattered away. By 9:19 p.m., it was over. 7 men lay dead or dying on imported Italian marble. The jazz quartet's abandoned instruments leaked broken strings and silence. Smoke hung in the air like ghosts, and in the center of it all, Sebastian Bates stood with a gun in his hand and something like recognition in his eyes. The waitress was breathing hard, her white shirt splattered with blood that wasn't hers, her hands steady despite what she'd just done. She looked at him. He looked at her. 2 predators in the wreckage, acknowledging each other the only way they knew how, with the understanding that they'd both just killed, without hesitation, without remorse, without anything resembling civilization. Sebastian's surviving men were already moving, securing the scene, checking bodies, preparing the story they'd tell the police. Marcus caught his eye, gestured toward the waitress with his chin. A question. Sebastian shook his head. Not yet. "Who the hell are you?" Sebastian asked, his voice carrying across the ruined restaurant. Jessica straightened, brushed glass from her sleeve, and met his gaze without flinching. "Nobody, just a waitress. Waitresses don't move like that. Maybe you don't know enough waitresses." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The first patrol cars would arrive in minutes. Jessica glanced toward the kitchen exit, calculating her escape route the same way she'd calculated everything else tonight, quickly, efficiently, without attachment. "Don't run," Sebastian said. It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't a suggestion either. She looked at him one more time, this white man in his expensive suit, with his expensive gun and his expensive life, standing in the middle of expensive carnage like it was just another Tuesday. She saw something in his eyes that maybe she recognized, the same emptiness she'd been carrying since her mother died responding to a gang shooting when Jessica was 15. Since her father disappeared the same night with nothing but a service medal and a note that said some wars never end, they just change zip codes. "Watch me," Jessica said, and disappeared through the kitchen before he could stop her. Sebastian didn't follow. He knew how to recognize a ghost when he saw one, and he knew, the way you know things that matter, that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something that would burn them both to ash, or forge them into something harder than the world that tried to break them. Outside, red and blue lights painted the street. Inside, bodies cooled on marble. And somewhere in the Los Angeles night, two broken predators circled each other in the dark, bound by blood and instinct and the understanding that when violence found you, you had two choices: run or become something worse than what was hunting you. Jessica Marley and Sebastian Bates had both made their choice years ago. Tonight, they just found each other in it. The brass lanterns smelled like regret and cheap whiskey. Not the kind of place that served craft cocktails or cared about ambiance, just a dark hole in Koreatown where people came to forget their names for a few hours. The neon sign outside flickered between red and dead, casting shadows that moved like they had somewhere better to be. Jessica Marley stood behind the bar, pouring Jack Daniels into a rocks glass with the same precision she'd used to flip that table 12 hours ago. She'd changed clothes, scrubbed the blood from under her fingernails, moved her few possessions from her studio apartment to a storage locker downtown. Standard protocol when a cover gets burned. Stay mobile, stay anonymous, stay alive. The bar had maybe a dozen customers scattered across cracked vinyl booths. A couple of day drinkers nursing hangovers into the afternoon. A woman crying quietly in the corner over something that probably had a name and a wedding ring. Nobody looked at Jessica twice. That's how she liked it. Then Sebastian Bates walked through the door, and every shadow in the room bent toward him. He didn't belong here. His suit probably cost more than the bar's monthly rent. But he moved through the space like he owned it anyway, like ownership was just a decision you made and enforced. Two men flanked him, not the ones from last night, but the same breed, professional, dangerous, watching everything. Jessica kept pouring drinks, didn't look up, didn't acknowledge him, just kept her hands busy and her breathing steady, the way she learned in rooms where one wrong move meant a bullet. Sebastian slid onto a bar stool directly across from her. Up close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the fresh cut above his eyebrow where flying glass had kissed him. He looked tired. Tired the way soldiers get tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much weight for too long. "Whiskey," he said, "whatever you're pouring." Jessica grabbed a clean glass, poured 2 fingers of Jack, slid it across the bar without meeting his eyes. $8. He put a $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." "I don't take tips that large. Makes people memorable." "You're already memorable." His voice was quiet, controlled, like everything about him. "You killed 2 men last night with a serving tray and a broken bottle. That tends to stick in people's minds." Around them, the bar continued its slow drowning. Nobody was listening. Nobody cared. In a place like this, you learned not to hear things. Jessica finally looked at him, met his eyes without flinching. "I don't know what you're talking about. I serve drinks." "You move like a soldier, fight like one too. Trained, disciplined, efficient." He took a sip of whiskey, didn't wince at the burn. "Special forces, maybe, or something the government doesn't put on recruiting posters." Sounds like you have an active imagination. I have good instincts. They've kept me alive in situations where imagination gets you killed. He set the glass down carefully, aligned it with the grain of the wood. So, let me guess. Military background? Probably combat deployment. Things went sideways, or you saw too much. Came home to find there was no home anymore. Now you're hiding in dive bars, pouring drinks for drunks, pretending you're nobody. Jessica's expression didn't change, but her hands stilled on the bar towel she'd been using to wipe down the counter. You found me. Congratulations. What do you want? To know why you didn't run. Who says I didn't? You're still in Los Angeles, still working. If you were really running, you'd be in another state by now, maybe another country. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the bar, voice dropping lower. So, either you're not as smart as I think you are, or you're not done here yet. Jessica poured herself a shot of whiskey, against house rules, but the owner was passed out in the back office, and drank it in one smooth motion. Felt the burn travel down her throat, settle in her chest like a small fire. Maybe I just don't scare easy. Everyone scares. Question is what you do with it. For a long moment, they studied each other. Two people who'd learned to read violence in other people's eyes, to smell danger before it arrived, to calculate odds in the space between heartbeats. Why are you here? Jessica asked finally. You don't strike me as the type who drinks in places like this. I wanted to make you an offer. Not interested. You haven't heard it yet. Don't need to. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. She moved down the bar to serve another customer, giving him her back, a deliberate dismissal. Sebastian didn't leave. He sat there, patient as a stone, waiting. When she returned, he tried again. Those men last night weren't random. They came from me specifically. Military trained, well-funded, coordinated. That kind of operation doesn't happen without serious backing. He rotated the glass between his fingers. Someone wants me dead badly enough to turn a restaurant full of civilians into a war zone. And you killed 2 of their men. So, they saw you. They know you're not just a waitress, which means you're not a bystander anymore. You're a witness, a threat. He let that sink in. They'll come for you too. Jessica's jaw tightened. She'd been trying not to think about that, but she'd learned a long time ago that ignoring reality didn't make it disappear. Then I'll handle it. Alone? Against a crew that can put together a 7-man assault team in under 24 hours? Sebastian shook his head. You're good, I saw that, but nobody's that good. I've survived worse. I'm sure you have, but survival isn't the same as winning. He pushed the $100 bill toward her again. I can offer you protection, resources, information, and if you want to disappear properly, new identity, clean papers, money to start over somewhere they'll never find you, I can arrange that too. In exchange for what? Help me find out who sent them, why now, what they want. His eyes were steady, honest in a way that felt dangerous, and maybe keep us both alive long enough to burn their operation to the ground. Jessica laughed, short, sharp, bitter. You want me to go to war with you against people we don't know, for reasons we don't understand, with odds that are probably suicide? That about right? More or less. And what makes you think I give a damn whether you live or die? Sebastian finished his whiskey, stood up, buttoned his jacket with the precision of a man performing a ritual. Because when those bullets started flying, you didn't run for the exits. You fought. Not because you had to. You could have hidden, could have played dead, could have saved yourself. But you saw people in danger and you moved. He held her gaze. That's not training. That's character. And character means you'll care when they come for the next restaurant, the next group of people who can't fight back. He turned to leave, his men falling into step behind him. At the door, he paused. They'll find you, Jessica. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they will find you. His voice carried across the dim space. Question is whether you want to be alone when that happens, or whether you want someone watching your 6 who knows how to fight back. Then he was gone, and the bar returned to its slow drowning. Jessica stood there, towel in her hands, staring at the $100 bill on the counter. Around her, people drank and talked and pretended their lives made sense. She thought about her mother, bleeding out on a street corner while trying to save someone else. Thought about her father's note. Some wars never end, they just change zip codes. Thought about the girl screaming under her mother's arms last night and how close those bullets had come. She grabbed her jacket from under the bar, told the half-conscious owner she was done for the day, and walked out into the Los Angeles afternoon. The sun was too bright, the traffic too loud, the world too indifferent. Sebastian's car was still parked across the street, waiting. Jessica crossed to it, knocked on the window. It rolled down smoothly, revealing Sebastian in the back seat, unsurprised. "I'm not doing this because I trust you," she said. "I wouldn't respect you if you did. And I'm not your soldier. We're partners, or this doesn't happen." Sebastian extended his hand through the window. Partners. Jessica looked at his hand for a long moment. Pale skin, expensive watch, knuckles scarred from violence he'd survived. Then she shook it. "When do we start?" "Now," Sebastian said, and smiled like a man who'd just won a war he'd been planning for years. Sebastian's safe house wasn't what Jessica expected. No mansion in the hills, no fortress with gates and guards. Just a modest craftsman in Silver Lake, the kind of house where young professionals lived with rescue dogs and dreams of screenwriting success. Forgettable, invisible, smart. Inside was different. The windows had bulletproof film. The doors were reinforced steel disguised as wood. Cameras covered every angle, and the basement had been converted into something between a war room and a bunker. Maps covered the walls, surveillance photos, financial records. The organized paranoia of a man who knew that comfort was just another word for complacency. Jessica stood in the center of it, taking inventory. 2 exits she could see, probably 3 she couldn't. Good sightlines, defensible. "You live here. I exist here," Sebastian said, shrugging off his jacket. Underneath, the shoulder holster looked like part of his anatomy. "Living is something I stopped doing a long time ago." He poured coffee from a pot that had been sitting too long, offered her a cup. She took it, more for the ritual than the caffeine. They sat at a table scattered with files, and for a moment neither spoke. Just 2 people who'd killed together, now trying to figure out if that made them allies or just convenient weapons. "You said you wanted to know who sent them," Jessica said finally. "You have theories?" "More than theories. Certainties." Sebastian pulled a photograph from the stack. A man in his 30s, handsome in that dangerous way. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. Paulo Reyes, son of Rafael Reyes, who used to run narcotics through the Midwest before someone burned his operation to the ground. "Let me guess, that someone was you." "Rafael and I had an arrangement. He moved product through my territories, I took a percentage, and looked the other way. Clean, simple, profitable." Sebastian's voice was flat, reciting history like a grocery list. "Then he got greedy, started recruiting my people, undercutting my prices, spreading word that I was weak. So I gave him a choice, back off or burn. He didn't back off. He tried to kill me instead. Car bomb outside a steakhouse in Chicago. Killed 2 federal agents who were eating nearby." Sebastian smiled without humor. "That's when I became useful to certain government agencies. They wanted Rafael gone, but couldn't touch him legally. I wanted him dead. We found common ground." Jessica understood the shape of it. She'd seen it overseas. The marriages of convenience between intelligence services and criminals. The deals made in rooms that didn't officially exist. "You gave them Rafael. I gave him his entire network. Names, routes, bank accounts, everything." He stared at the photograph. Rafael died in a federal raid. Most of his people went to prison. His empire disappeared like it never existed. And I became a ghost. Left Chicago, reinvented myself in LA, built something cleaner. Except empires don't disappear. They just wait. Paulo waited 10 years, learned patience, learned tactics, learned how to hurt me in ways his father never could. Sebastian pulled out more photos, burned warehouses, crime scenes, men Jessica didn't recognize with bullets in their heads. He's been dismantling my operation piece by piece for the last 6 months. Always careful, always deniable. Until last night. Last night was a message. Last night was a declaration of war. Jessica studied the photos, her mind cataloging patterns. Military precision, coordinated timing, insider knowledge. He has someone inside your organization. Had, past tense. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Found him this morning. My head of security, Martin Cole. Been with me for 3 years, saved my life twice. Paulo got to him anyway. Threatened his daughter, promised money, offered him something I couldn't. What happened to him? What needed to happen? Sebastian met her eyes. I don't forgive betrayal. Ever. The words hung in the air between them, a line drawn in blood. Jessica understood it. In her world, the world of night operations and kill orders, betrayal wasn't a crime you prosecuted. It was a problem you solved permanently. Tell me about Chicago, Sebastian said, pivoting. Your Chicago, not mine. Jessica hadn't expected that. She drank her coffee, bought herself time. Most people didn't ask about her past because they didn't care. But Sebastian was asking because he did, because he needed to know if the woman he'd just partnered with was solid or broken in ways that would get them both killed. Southside, she said finally, the part tourists don't visit. My mother was a paramedic, worked overnight shifts, responded to shootings and overdoses and domestic calls that went wrong. She paused, feeling the old wound open. When I was 15, she caught a call. Gang shooting, multiple casualties. She was first on scene. They killed her? Not intentionally. She was trying to save someone, and the shooters came back to finish what they started. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong world. Jessica's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. My father found out while he was at work. He was a locksmith, but that's not all he was. He had a military background he never talked about, scars from wars he never named. He went after them? He went somewhere. Left me a note and his service medal. Some wars never end, they just change zip codes. She'd memorized every word. Never saw him again. Police found blood in an abandoned factory, enough to suggest someone died there, but no body, no arrest, no answers. Sebastian nodded slowly. He understood the shape of that loss, the kind that didn't close because it never really opened, just bled quietly for years. So you enlisted, he said. Joined at 18. Turned out I was good at it. The discipline, the structure, the mission focus. By 22, I was special operations. The kind of work that doesn't make the news. Jessica's eyes went distant. We went places that didn't officially exist, did things that never officially happened. I was good at killing people my government wanted dead. Until you weren't. Until I realized I was just my mother all over again, rushing into violence, trying to save people who didn't want saving, bleeding for a mission that would forget me the second I stopped being useful. She set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. So I disappeared. Honorable discharge on paper, but really I just stepped off the grid. Came to LA because it was far from everything I'd been. Started over as nobody. And now? Now I'm right back where I started, in a room with a dangerous man planning violence, pretending it's for a good reason. Sebastian smiled, genuinely this time. Maybe we're not pretending. Maybe violence is just what we're good at, and the world keeps giving us excuses to use it. Outside, the Los Angeles sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Two people from Southside Chicago and the towers of power, shaped by the same city's violence, now sitting in a safe house 3,000 miles away, planning a war. You know the worst part? Jessica said quietly. I thought leaving would change something, thought distance would make me different. But you're still you, still me. Still carrying the same weight, still seeing my mother bleed out every time I close my eyes. Sebastian stood, moved to the window, watched the city darken. My first kill was my uncle.
He tried to take over my father's business when the old man got sick. I was 19, ambitious, stupid enough to think loyalty mattered. He didn't turn around. I beat him to death with a pipe wrench in a warehouse basement. Took 11 minutes. I counted. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to know what you're partnering with. I'm not a good man, Jessica. I'm a ghost made of violence and ambition. And the only reason I'm still breathing is because I'm willing to do things other people can't stomach. He turned to face her. But I keep my word, and I finish what I start. Jessica stood too, met him in the fading light. Then let's finish this. They shook hands again, but this time it felt different. Not a business arrangement, but a pact between two people who'd seen hell and decided to walk back in together. Outside, the ghosts of Chicago circled in the dark, waiting to see which version of themselves would survive what came next.
The building didn't look like a fortress. That was the point. A sleek glass tower in Century City, indistinguishable from a dozen others where entertainment lawyers and talent agents brokered deals over overpriced salads. Sebastian's legitimate business occupied the 14th floor, Bates Urban Development, with its minimalist logo and press releases about community revitalization. The real work happened 3 floors below, in a sub-level that didn't appear on any building directory. Jessica followed Sebastian through a private elevator that required 3 separate biometric scans. The doors opened onto a space that looked like a tech startup had collided with a military command center. Banks of monitors covered one wall, displaying feeds from cameras across the city. A conference table dominated the center, surrounded by men and women who looked like accountants but moved like soldiers. They all stopped talking when Sebastian entered, not from fear, though Jessica sensed that too, but from respect. The kind you earned by bleeding alongside people, by making decisions that kept them alive when everything went sideways. "This is Jessica Marley," Sebastian said without preamble. "She's working with us now. Treat her like you'd treat me." A few exchanged glances. One man, late 30s, military haircut, scar through his eyebrow, spoke up. "With all due respect, boss, we don't know her." "You didn't know Martin Cole either," Sebastian said quietly, "and he sold us out for 3 years before I found out, so maybe we stop pretending we're good at knowing people." That shut down the objections. Jessica recognized the play, Sebastian establishing her authority by acknowledging his own failure. Smart. It made her legitimate without making her liked, which was fine. She wasn't here to make friends. "Show her everything," Sebastian ordered, moving to the head of the table. "Azure room surveillance, traffic cameras, witness statements, everything." A woman with red hair pulled back in a severe bun, introduced as Claire, Sebastian's tech specialist, brought up footage on the main screen. The Azure room from multiple angles, timestamp 9:14 p.m. Jessica watched herself moving through the dining room, carrying champagne, smiling at customers who'd be screaming 2 minutes later. Then 9:16, the window exploding inward. 7 figures breaching in perfect formation, 2 securing the entrance, 2 moving to flank, 3 converging on Sebastian's position. Textbook small unit tactics. "Pause there," Jessica said, stepping closer to the screen. Claire froze the image. Jessica pointed to the lead attacker's posture, the way he held his weapon. "That's not street training, that's military. See how his fingers indexed along the frame? How he's scanning corners before he moves? This guy's had professional instruction." "All of them," added Marcus, Sebastian's man from the restaurant, now wearing a clean shirt but the same alert expression. "I ran their faces through our databases. 2 of them were ex-Army Rangers, dishonorably discharged. 1 was private security, got fired for excessive force. The others are harder to trace, but they move the same way." Sebastian leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Paulo's recruiting from the same pool I do. Ex-military, no moral complications, willing to work off books for the right price." "It's more than that," Jessica said, still studying the footage. "Look at the timing. They hit during dinner service, maximum chaos, but they knew exactly where you'd be sitting. They bypassed 3 other VIP tables to reach yours. She turned to face the room. Someone gave them your exact position, your security details locations, your escape routes. Martin Cole, Sebastian said, his voice like gravel. Had to be. Maybe, but Cole's dead now, and they're still coming. Jessica crossed her arms, which means either he wasn't the only one, or someone else is feeding them intelligence. The room went cold. Everyone glanced at each other, calculating, suspicious. Trust was already thin. Now Jessica had shredded what remained. "I don't like what you're implying," said a man in the corner, Victor, Sebastian's financial advisor, who looked soft, but Jessica noticed carried his weight forward on his toes, ready to move. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. 7 trained operators, perfect timing, insider knowledge. That doesn't happen with one compromised asset. That happens with systematic infiltration." Sebastian stood, silencing the room with his presence. "Then we operate under the assumption that anything said here might reach Paulo, which means we control the information flow. Need-to-know basis only. No one gets the full picture except me and Jessica." More unhappy glances, but no one argued. Sebastian's word was law here, enforced by loyalty and the memory of what happened to people who broke it. Claire brought up more footage, traffic cameras from surrounding blocks, time-stamped before the attack. A white van parked 2 streets over. 3 men exiting through a service entrance. All professional, all careful, all invisible unless you knew what to look for. "They staged from here," Jessica said, tracing the route. "Used the storm drain access to avoid street cameras. Smart, disciplined, patient." She turned to Sebastian. "Paulo's not just coming after you. He's dissecting your operation like a surgery. Last night was him announcing he's ready to move from reconnaissance to execution." "So what's his endgame?" Marcus asked. "Humiliation first, death second," Sebastian answered. "He doesn't just want me gone. He wants me destroyed. Reputation, empire, everything. He wants people to know the ghost of Chicago died whimpering." Jessica pulled up a chair, sat backwards on it, arms draped over the backrest. "Then we don't give him the satisfaction. We make him come to us on our terms, in places we control, with information we feed him." "You want to use the leak," Sebastian said, understanding immediately. "I want to turn it into a weapon. Let them think they're hunting you while you're actually hunting them." She glanced around the room, measuring faces, reading micro-expressions. "But first, we need to know who's talking." For the next 3 hours, they war-gamed scenarios. Jessica broke down Paulo's likely tactics, explained how special operations worked, identified vulnerabilities in Sebastian's network. She was ruthless in her assessment, pointing out failures no one wanted to admit: soft security at the warehouses, predictable movement patterns, too much trust in outdated protocols. Sebastian listened without ego, absorbing criticism that would have gotten anyone else thrown from the building. He was learning her the way she was learning him, cataloging strengths, accepting weaknesses, building the kind of operational understanding that kept partners alive. Around midnight, the others filtered out until only Sebastian, Jessica, and Marcus remained. The monitors glowed in the darkness, surveillance feeds painting the city in shades of gray. "You really think we can win this?" Marcus asked quietly. Jessica looked at Sebastian, saw the same question in his eyes, even if he wouldn't ask it. "War without rules is the only kind I know how to fight," she said. "And if Paulo wants to play in that space, he's going to learn what it cost me to survive there." Sebastian smiled, cold, predatory, satisfied. "Then let's teach him." Outside, Los Angeles slept uneasily, unaware that beneath its surface, 2 forces were circling toward collision. One built on revenge and the legitimacy of grievance. The other built on survival and the willingness to become worse than whatever was hunting them. The chessboard was set, but Jessica had learned in darker places that chess was a civilized game, and what was coming had stopped being civilized the moment Paulo Reyes decided blood was the only currency that mattered. In the reflection of the monitors, she saw her mother's face, bleeding on that street corner, saw her father's note, "Some wars never end." She was done running from hers. Now she'd make sure Paulo Reyes regretted starting his. The club was called Requiem, and it earned its name. 3 stories of pulsing darkness where the city's beautiful and damned came to forget themselves in bass that rattled rib cages and liquor that cost more than rent. Sebastian owned it, though his name appeared nowhere on the paperwork. Just another piece of his empire, dressed in velvet and neon. His office was on the 3rd floor, soundproofed walls turning the chaos below into a distant heartbeat. Jessica stood at the window, watching strobes paint the dance floor in epileptic colors. She'd been Sebastian's shadow for 2 weeks now, accompanying him to meetings, scanning rooms before he entered, reading body language the way other people read text messages. 3 more attacks in 14 days. A car bomb that detonated 60 seconds after Sebastian changed his route, Jessica's instinct saving them. A sniper positioned across from his downtown office. Jessica spotted the glint before the first shot. An ambush in an underground parking garage. She'd killed 2 men with Sebastian's backup weapon while he took down 3 more. They were alive because she was better at predicting violence than Paulo's people were at delivering it. "You need to stop going to the same restaurants," Jessica said without turning from the window. "You're a creature of habit. It's going to get you killed." Sebastian looked up from the financial reports scattered across his desk. "I've been eating at Osteria Mazza every Thursday for 6 years. Then this Thursday, don't. I have a standing reservation. You'll have a standing funeral if you keep making yourself predictable." She finally turned to face him. "You hired me to keep you alive. That means you listen when I tell you you're being stupid." Most people didn't talk to Sebastian Bates that way. Most people valued their careers, their kneecaps, their lives. But Jessica wasn't most people, and Sebastian was learning that the things he could threaten or buy meant nothing to someone who'd already lost everything that mattered. "Fine," he said, surprising himself. "Where do you suggest?" "Nowhere. We eat here, in secure locations, until this is over." "That could be months. Then you'll get really familiar with takeout." Jessica moved to his desk, spread out a map of Los Angeles she'd marked with red pins. "These are the locations of the attacks. See the pattern? They're tightening the circle, learning your movements, closing in. Every time you stick to routine, you make their job easier." Sebastian studied the map, seeing what she saw, the slow constriction of a noose. "You think like them. I was them. Different uniform, different flag, same mission profile. Identify, isolate, eliminate." She tapped the center of the circle, where his penthouse was marked. "They're coming for you at home next. Somewhere you feel safe, where your guard is down. Then we'll be ready. We'll be somewhere else." That's how they ended up rotating between 4 different safe houses, never staying more than 2 nights in the same location. Sebastian operated his empire from burner phones and encrypted laptops, Jessica always within arm's reach, always watching the shadows for the violence she knew was coming. They trained together in the early mornings, before the city woke. An abandoned warehouse Sebastian owned in Boyle Heights, concrete and exposed steel and enough space to move. Jessica teaching him things the streets never had: proper stance, sight alignment, how to clear a room without dying in the doorway. "You shoot like a gangster," she said, watching him mag dump into a target. "Lots of bullets, no precision." "Bullets have always been enough. Bullets are never enough. Accuracy is enough." She moved behind him, adjusted his grip, her hands on his. "Feel that? You're anticipating the recoil, pulling down before you shoot. Let the weapon do its job. You do yours." He fired again. Center mass, tight grouping, controlled. Better. "Good," she said, close enough that he could smell her, gun oil and coffee and something underneath that was just her. Again.
They worked until his arms shook and his shirt was sweat with respiration. Then she ran him through hand-to-hand drills, teaching him to fight the way she'd learned in rooms where losing meant a body bag. She was faster, more technical, but he was stronger, more vicious. When they sparred, it was almost even. Almost. She swept his leg, dropped him, and stood over him with her hand extended. "You telegraph your punches. Fix that." He took her hand, let her pull him up, but didn't let go. "When's the last time you trained someone you didn't expect to die?" The question caught her off guard. She pulled her hand free, stepped back. "Doesn't matter. It matters to me." But she was already walking away, putting distance between them and whatever that moment had almost become.